I stood in the lobby of the First National Bank, feeling the air conditioning hum against my skin. It was a normal Tuesday, or so I thought. I had come to withdraw $5,000 for the down payment on the tractor I had been eyeing for our small farm. The teller, a young woman with a kind face, looked at her screen, then looked at me, then back at the screen. She cleared her throat, her expression shifting from professional to pitying. "Mr. Vance, I'm afraid there's an issue with the transaction," she said softly. I leaned in, my heart giving a small, nervous thump. "Is the system down?" I asked. She shook her head and lowered her voice so the people in line behind me wouldn't hear. "No, sir. It's just that the balance in your primary savings account is currently $42. I felt like the floor had vanished beneath my feet. We had $150,000 in that account yesterday. It was the forever fund we had built over 10 years. My breath hitched as I gripped the edge of the marble counter. "That's impossible," I managed to choke out. "Check again. My wife, Bianca, and I are the only ones with access." The teller printed out a statement and slid it across the counter. My eyes blurred as I scanned the rows of numbers. There it was, a massive wire transfer at 9 a.m. that morning. $150,000 sent to an offshore holding company I didn't recognize. I felt a cold sweat break out across my neck. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Bianca. "Hey babe, I'm headed to that luxury spa in the city with some girls from work. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you." I looked at the text, then at the $42 balance on the paper. The woman I had shared a bed with for a decade, the woman I had worked 3 jobs to support while she finished her degree, had just emptied our entire life's work. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't scream. I just folded the paper, put it in my pocket, and walked out into the bright afternoon sun. The betrayal felt like a physical weight in my chest, crushing my lungs. I got into my old truck and sat there for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. I knew one thing for certain, I wasn't going home to confront her. Not yet. Before we dive deeper into how I handled this, I want to ask, where are you all watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. It's amazing to see people from all over the world connecting through these stories. Also, remember that while these events are based on a very real emotional journey, some names and details have been changed for privacy. Now, let's get back to the moment I realized my life was a lie. I drove to a park near our house and sat on a bench, watching families play. I needed to think. If I went home and yelled, she would just lie. She was a master of gaslighting. I needed proof. I went home and waited until she was in the shower that evening. I found her old phone in the bottom of the laundry basket, hidden under a pile of towels. It didn't have a passcode. I opened the messages and my world shattered again. There were hundreds of photos and texts with a man named Julian. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning a life. Julian was bragging about the luxury penthouse he had found for them. Bianca's reply made my blood boil. "Don't worry, the piggy bank is full. We move in Friday." The piggy bank was me. I was the one who had stayed up late doing the taxes, the one who fixed the roof to save money, and the one who skipped vacation so she could have designer bags. To them, I was just a source of funding for their new beginning. I saw a moving day checklist Julian had sent her. They were planning to wait until I was at work on Friday to pack up everything of value in the house and vanish. I sat on the edge of the bed, the blue light of the phone illuminating my face. The rage was there, deep and hot, but beneath it was a strange, icy clarity. If they wanted to move, I was going to help them. I was going to make sure their move was the most memorable experience of their lives. I put the phone back exactly where I found it. When Bianca came out of the bathroom, smelling of expensive soap I had paid for, she smiled at me. "You look tired, Leo," she said, leaning down to kiss my cheek. I forced myself not to flinch. "Just a long day at the bank," I said calmly. She didn't even blink. The next morning, I didn't go to the farm. I went to see a man I knew from my high school days, a private investigator named Silas. Silas was a man who lived in the shadows and knew how to follow a paper trail. I handed him the bank statement and the names. "I need to know everything about Julian," I told him. Silas called me 4 hours later. It was worse than a simple affair. Julian was a professional con artist who targeted wealthy or stable women. But here was the kicker, Julian was currently under investigation for a real estate scam. And Bianca? She hadn't just taken the savings. Silas found out she had forged my signature on a second mortgage on our farm 3 weeks ago. She had pulled out another $80,000. My farm, the land my grandfather had left me, was now at risk of foreclosure because of her greed. The stakes weren't just my heart anymore, it was my legacy. I felt a surge of adrenaline. The helpful husband act was no longer just about revenge, it was about survival. I had to move fast. I went home that afternoon with a big smile on my face. I brought Bianca a bouquet of roses and a bottle of wine. I have amazing news, I told her over dinner. She looked suspicious for a second, then masked it. What is it? She asked. I leaned across the table, acting like I was bursting with excitement. I got a massive bonus from the land development deal I've been working on. It's over $200,000. It hits the account on Monday. I watched her eyes widen. I could almost see the gears turning in her head. She was probably thinking about how much more Julian would love her with another 200 grand. That's incredible, Leo. We should celebrate. I nodded eagerly. Actually, I was thinking. I know you've been feeling cramped here. I want to help you find a private studio for your art. Somewhere in the city. In fact, if you find a place you like, I'll pay the first 6 months of rent up front as a surprise. She nearly choked on her wine. She thought she was played me, but I was the one holding the deck. Thursday arrived, the day before their grand escape. Bianca introduced me to Julian, calling him her cousin, who was in town to help her look at studio spaces. Julian was exactly what I expected: slicked back hair, a cheap suit that tried too hard to look expensive, and a handshake that felt like a wet fish. He looked at my old flannel shirt and work boots with total contempt. He thought I was a simple country idiot. Nice to meet you, Leo, Julian said, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. Bianca tells me you're a very generous man. I laughed and clapped him on the shoulder, hard enough to make him stumble. Family is everything, Julian. If Bianca's cousin needs a place to stay while you guys look for her studio, you're welcome in our guest room. Bianca looked stunned, then relieved. She thought I was making it even easier for them to rob me. They spent the evening in the guest room, probably whispering about how pathetic and easy I was. Little did they know, I had spent the afternoon installing high-definition hidden cameras with audio in that very room. I sat in my truck in the driveway, watching the live feed on my tablet. I watched Julian and Bianca laughing as they tossed their suitcases onto the bed. He's literally going to pay for our penthouse, Julian. Bianca squealed, tossing a handful of my cash into the air like confetti. Julian pulled her close. He's a loser. Once the bonus hits on Monday, we'll be in the Caribbean and he'll be trying to figure out why the bank is taking his farm. It's almost too easy. Hearing them talk about taking my farm, my grandfather's land, turned my heart into a block of ice. I didn't feel hurt anymore. I felt like a hunter. I had recorded everything they said. Every confession of fraud, every joke about the forged signature, and every detail of their offshore account. I also had a secret weapon. I knew Julian was being watched by the feds. I had spent the morning talking to a contact in the district attorney's office. I wasn't just going to break their hearts, I was going to hand them a prison sentence. Friday morning, the day of the big move. I woke up and made them both breakfast. I was the picture of the doting, oblivious husband. I've got the day off, I announced, grinning at their pale faces. I want to help you guys move your stuff into that new penthouse you found. I've already rented a big moving van. They exchanged a panicked look. They had planned to sneak out while I was at work. Oh, Leo, you don't have to do that, Bianca said, her voice shaking. We don't want to ruin your day off. I insisted, waving my spatula around. Nonsense. I want to see the place. I'm so proud of you, Bianca. I spent the next 4 hours lugging their heavy boxes into the van. I made sure to handle the special boxes, the ones with her jewelry and the documents, with extra care. While I was packing the van, I took her jewelry box to my tool shed for 5 minutes. I swapped every diamond and gold piece with high-quality fakes I had bought from a costume shop. I put the real ones in a safe deposit box. They were going to need money for lawyers soon, they just didn't know it wouldn't be mine. We drove to the city in the moving van, with Julian following in his flashy, leased sports car. The penthouse was in a gated community, the kind of place that screams new money. As I carried the boxes inside, I looked around. It was beautiful, all glass and white marble. Wow, Bianca, you have great taste, I said, wiping fake sweat from my forehead. I noticed a state-of-the-art, smart home hub on the wall. I recognized the brand. My cousin worked for the security company that installed them. 2 days ago, I had paid him to set me up as the master administrator of this specific unit system. I had full control over the locks, the lights, the water, and the elevator access from my phone. I watched Julian swagger around the living room like he owned the world. Thanks for the help, Leo, he said, not even looking at me. We can take it from here. I smiled and reached into my pocket. Wait, I have one last surprise. I'm going to go down to the car to get the welcome home cake I bought. Stay right here. I walked out of the penthouse and stepped into the elevator. The second the doors closed, my smile vanished. I pulled out my phone and opened the smart home app. With 3 taps, I engaged the security lockdown mode. I heard the faint, heavy thud of the deadbolts engaging throughout the penthouse. I disabled the elevator's floor access code for their unit. Then, I went to the building's main office. I had a folder ready. It contained the evidence that Julian had used a stolen identity to sign the lease and that the deposit check he provided was from a closed account. I handed it to the building manager, a stern man who didn't like being scammed. I believe the people in 42B are trespassing and committing fraud, I told him calmly. You might want to call the police. I walked out to the sidewalk and sat on a bench across the street. I pulled out my tablet and turned on the penthouse cameras. The show was about to start. On the screen, I saw Bianca and Julian trying to open the front door. They were rattling the handle, looking confused. The electronic lock must be glitching, Julian muttered. He tried the keypad, but I had already changed the code to the date of our wedding, a date he obviously didn't know. Then the lights started flickering. I used the app to turn the thermostat up to 90 degrees. Within minutes, they were sweating in their designer clothes. Bianca started to panic. Julian, call the manager. Why won't the door open? Julian pulled out his phone, but I had a signal jammer running in my truck parked right outside their window. No service, he yelled, slamming his phone against the marble counter. I watched them crumble. The powerful couple was trapped in a glass cage of their own making. I took a slow sip of my coffee, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The underdog was finally biting back, and I wasn't finished. I picked up my phone and called the penthouse intercom. The speaker crackled to life, and I heard Bianca's hysterical voice. Hello? Is someone there? We're trapped. I leaned back on the bench, looking up at their window. Hey Bianca. It's Leo. I forgot to mention, the bonus I told you about? It doesn't exist. But the $42 left in our savings account? That's all yours. There was a long, horrifying silence. Leo, she whispered. What are you talking about? My voice turned cold. I know about the offshore account. I know about the second mortgage on the farm. I know about Julian's real estate scams. And most importantly, I know you never loved me. You loved the piggy bank. Well, the bank is closed, Bianca. Forever. I heard Julian screaming in the background, threatening me. I just laughed. Save your breath, Julian. The building manager is on his way up with the police. And by the way, those diamonds in your bag? Check them. They're as fake as your cousin act. The next scene was pure chaos. Through the camera, I saw a woman I recognized from Silas's report, Julian's actual girlfriend, a woman named Chloe. I had sent her a tip about where Julian was hiding with his new mark. She had arrived at the building and was currently screaming at the front desk, demanding to be let up. I decided to be helpful one last time. I unlocked the elevator for her. A few minutes later, Chloe was pounding on the penthouse door. Julian. You lying snake. I know you're in there with that nurse. Inside, Bianca and Julian started fighting. The perfect couple was tearing each other apart. Bianca realized Julian had been playing her just as much as she played me. You told me I was the only one, she screamed, throwing a vase at his head. Julian didn't care about her anymore. He was busy trying to hide his laptop. It was a beautiful, ugly mess. The emotional justice I had been craving was playing out in high definition. The police arrived 10 minutes later. They didn't just come for a noise complaint. Because I had handed over the evidence of the forged mortgage and the wire transfers to the feds, they were there with a warrant for grand larceny and wire fraud. I watched as the officers breached the door. Bianca was sitting on a pile of boxes, sobbing, while Julian was being tackled to the ground. The building manager followed them in, looking disgusted. I want them out of my building, he said. The officers led them out in handcuffs. As they came through the lobby, I stood up from my bench and walked toward the glass doors. Bianca saw me. Her face was a mask of ruined makeup and desperation. Leo, please. Help me. He made me do it. I didn't say a word. I just pulled a single $42 bill out of my pocket and handed it to the officer. Give this to her. It's all she has left in the world. The aftermath was swift. My lawyer, a shark named Mr. Thorne, used the recordings from the guest room and the forensic audit to freeze the offshore account. Because the transfer was flagged as fraudulent within 48 hours, we were able to claw back $130,000 of the original $150,000. The second mortgage was a bigger problem, but because I could prove my signature was forged, and because Bianca admitted it on tape while arguing with Julian, the bank was forced to clear the debt from the farm. I didn't just get my money back, I got my life back. I spent the next month changing every lock, every password, and every memory in that house. I threw away everything she had touched. I even repainted the bedroom a deep, peaceful blue. For the first time in years, the air in my home felt clean. I wasn't the quiet husband anymore. I was a man who had stood in the fire and come out stronger. The news of the penthouse scam hit the local papers. People in our small town were shocked. They had always seen us as the perfect couple. I didn't hide from the gossip. When people asked, I told them the truth. She made a decision that affected my life without asking, so I made one that affected hers. My coworkers at the farm supply store started calling me the strategist. They saw that being a good man didn't mean being a weak man. I realized that for 10 years, I had been shrinking myself to make her feel big. I had been the underdog in my own marriage. But the satisfaction of seeing the arrogant Julian in a mugshot was better than any lottery win. He was sentenced to 12 years for a string of frauds. Bianca got 5 years for her role in the embezzlement. She sent me a letter from jail, asking for forgiveness. I didn't even open it. I dropped it into the fireplace and watched it burn. 6 months later, I was back at the First National Bank. I walked up to the same teller who had given me the bad news. She recognized me immediately. "Mr. Vance. How are you?" I smiled and handed her a deposit slip. It was for the final installment of the recovered funds. "I'm doing great," I told her. "I'd like to move this into a new account. One with only one name on it." She nodded, her eyes twinkling. "I think that's a very wise decision, sir." As I walked out, I saw a woman sitting on the same bench where I had sat during the lockdown. She looked upset, clutching a bank statement. I stopped for a second. "It gets better," I told her quietly. She looked up, surprised. "How do you know?" I just pointed to my truck, the one with the new tractor on the trailer behind it. "Because I decided it would." I drove back to the farm, the sun setting over the fields my grandfather had plowed. My legacy was safe. My heart was healing. And my future was finally my own. I've learned that the best revenge isn't being cruel, it's being firm and moving on. I don't hate Bianca anymore. Hate is an emotion, and she doesn't deserve any more of my energy. I feel a quiet satisfaction knowing that I didn't let her destroy me. I've started a financial literacy workshop for young couples in our town. I tell them my story, not to scare them, but to empower them. I teach them about joint accounts, about the importance of transparency, and about the signs of financial abuse. I see the underdogs in the room leaning in, their eyes widening just like mine did. If my pain can prevent someone else's ruin, then it wasn't for nothing. I am a farmer, a teacher, and a survivor. And every morning when I wake up and see the $42 bill I framed on my wall, I remember, I am the one who made the final decision. The final twist in the story came a year later. I received a phone call from a lawyer representing Julian's estate, or what was left of it. It turns out Julian had scammed a much larger company before he met Bianca, and they had successfully sued him for everything. But there was a small life insurance policy he had forgotten about, and because of a weird legal loophole in the moving documents I had helped him sign, I was listed as a secondary beneficiary for a small portion of it. It was only $5,000, the exact amount I had tried to withdraw for my tractor on that first Tuesday. I laughed until I cried. It was like the universe was giving me a final, cosmic high five. I didn't keep the money. I donated it to the St. Jude Nurses Pension Fund, the same one Julian had tried to rob. The circle was closed. The piggy bank had been emptied, refilled, and finally used for good. I recently went back to the penthouse building. Not to go inside, but to sit at the cafe across the street. I wanted to see the glass window one last time. It looked different now, empty and cold. A "for lease" sign was hanging in the window. I thought about the night I sat there watching the lights flicker. I thought about the man I was then, broken, scared, and desperate. I'm not that man anymore. I'm Leo Vance, and I own my land, my name, and my peace. I stood up, tipped the waiter, and walked to my truck. I didn't look back. The revenge fantasy was over, but the reality was much better. I drove home to the farm, where the corn was tall and the air smelled of rain. My dog, a golden retriever named Scout, was waiting for me on the porch. He didn't care about offshore accounts or penthouses. He just cared that I was home. And for the first time in my life, I knew exactly what home meant. Sometimes I wonder if Bianca ever thinks about that $42 bill. I wonder if she realizes that her greed cost her everything that actually mattered. She had a man who would have moved mountains for her, and she traded him for a man who wouldn't even open a door for her. But those are questions for her to answer in her cell. My life is full of new decisions now. I've started a small organic garden, and I'm selling the produce at the local market. I meet new people every day, people who know me for my work and my character, not for the drama of my past. I am the hero of my own story now, and the ending is a happy one. To anyone out there who feels like the underdog, who feels like someone is making decisions for them without asking, listen to your gut. Stay calm. Gather your evidence. You don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is be helpful while you build your own exit. You have more strength than you know. I am proof of that. My wife drained our savings to build a life with her secret boyfriend, and I helped them move in together first. But I was the one who walked away with the keys to my own freedom. And that is a win no one can ever take from me. My story has gone viral now, reaching people I'll never meet. I get messages from all over the world. Thank you for sharing, Leo. You gave me the courage to check my own accounts. It's a strange feeling, being a viral underdog, but I embrace it. It means the emotional core of my journey is helping others find their own satisfying resolution. We all have a Julian or a Bianca in our lives sometimes, someone who thinks we are too weak to fight back. Show them they are wrong. Show them that a quiet man with a plan is the most dangerous person in the room. As the sun dips below the horizon, I sit on my porch and take a deep breath. The farm is quiet. The birds are settling in the trees. I am at peace. I made a decision that affected her life, yes. But more importantly, I made a decision that saved mine. The story of Leo and Bianca is a closed book. The story of Leo, the man who owns his soul, is just beginning. And it's going to be a masterpiece. Thank you for listening. Now, go make your own best decision. The piggy bank of your life is yours to protect. Use it well.